Hello everyone and welcome to the Tuesday Checklist on a Wednesday, the show where we chat about our personal video game experiences, whether that's taking an exciting look at what video games lie on the horizon or reliving the time we bit a controller in half in a fit of rage. It happens. Speaking of rage though, for this week's slice of midweek madness, we are celebrating the launch of God of War 2018 on PC. Coming this Friday the 14th of January, PC players can experience one of the most breathtaking titles from PlayStation Studios for the very first time. So we could barely contain ourselves at the opportunity to wax lyrical about our favourite parts of this fantastic game. Do note that very mild spoilers lie ahead. First up then, we have our own rage-filled mascot, Rob.
So, my favourite moment from God of War, or a moment that sticks in my memory the most, happens really early on in the game. And I think it's when, having come from the previous God of War games to this new vision for God of War, it's the moment when God of War basically makes the statement and it says this is what the game is like now. And it's the first time you encounter, I'm going to call him the Stranger in case there's anyone watching this who's yet to play the game. I mean, you're going to have lots of it spoiled for you later on in the video anyway, probably by other people. But when
so stick with us.
When the Stranger first appears, he knocks on the door of Kratos' hut. It's all a bit, who's this? What's going on? Kratos doesn't know who it is. He opens the door and you see this small, annoying, scrawny, bearded man who starts trash-talking Kratos, and you're like, he hasn't got a clue, this guy. He hasn't got a clue who he's speaking to here. He is going to get his ass kicked so bad. And, he starts punching Kratos, and it's really interesting because you get to see Kratos, you get to see his restraint, which is not something that we've seen from this character previous to this game. Usually, any kind of provocation at all, and Kratos likes to just rip your head off and scream and impale you or rip you apart. But you can see that Kratos, he's matured a bit now. He's got his son to think about. Atreus is back inside the house, hidden away, and you can see he doesn't want there to be a conflict here. He doesn't want to get involved in a big fight if he doesn't have to, but he gets continually punched by this guy.
That'll do it.
And so so there's the bit where he's like, Kratos has had enough. He blocks the punch and the Stranger's gonna get it now, and Kratos absolutely leathers him, and you're cheering like, yeah, have some of that, go away. And then out of nowhere the Stranger punches Kratos with a kind of supernatural strength, and Kratos goes absolutely flying. He absolutely launches you, and that's the moment. That's the moment where you're like, oh god, what the hell's happening here? And that's when you get the first serious. You would call it a boss fight. It's like the very first boss fight, even though it's more like a tutorial than anything else. But for a battle so early on in the game, it really does an amazing job, I think, of showing you how the series is changing now going forward. It's sort of like a really effective distillation of everything that this game offers in terms of how the combat feels compared to how combat felt in the previous God of War games. Previously, everything was on this grand epic scale, and that's not to say that there aren't grand epic battles in this God of War. Absolutely there are, but it's much closer in to Kratos. The action is much closer. The camera's much closer. There's like an intimacy to the combat where you really feel like you're in it. You're really doing it. And the emotional stakes immediately are really, really high. This is like, half an hour into the game, and already you absolutely hate the Stranger. You hate him. You want nothing more than to absolutely beat the snot out of him. And also there's the added emotional weight of Atreus. Atreus is there. Kratos is trying to look out for his son, and the Stranger knows that he's in there. There's that little scene where he looks inside. He's like, "Ooh, oh, there's a second bed in there, is there? And Kratos, like, you know, you can really feel that kind of almost panic, you would say, like Kratos, like, oh my god, who the hell is this guy? Why is he so strong? And this fight just escalates and escalates and escalates, and it's this really kind of close, intimate, one-on-one bit of combat. But each character just sort of like keeps revealing a bit more of their strength. So the stranger obviously was holding back initially, starts showing how powerful he really is. Kratos starts to, you know, he has to start to let go of that restraint, that initial restraint, to actually beat this guy. They start throwing each other through rocks, they're smashing each other into trees, they're, you know, doing things to each other that, you know, a normal mortal person would not be able to survive. This is clearly two kind of supernatural beings going at each other. And I just thought it was an incredible introduction so early on in the game to have a battle that was so emotionally intense, so visually arresting, and really incredibly epic in terms of what's at stake. You know, in terms of, you know, the stage on which this battle is set, it's certainly not as grand or as enormous as some of the other battles in the game, or indeed the God of War series, but there's something incredibly, you know, you're really invested straight away. And I thought that was a really smart way for this God of War to show the audience, okay, this is, you know, we're playing for keeps now. This is what God of War is going to be like going forward. And I remember being blown away by that fight, and when it had finished, just having to really sort of recover, like, oh my god, you know, okay, I'm ready for God of War now. Yeah, and it really stuck in my memory. I thought it was absolutely amazing.
So my favourite moment from God of War, I think, kind of follows on quite nicely from Rob's, as it's another big cinematic battle. And I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this, but it's when Razlir, the dragon, emerges from the mountain and comes out and starts spewing lightning and being a big old badass dragon. It is so, so, so good. Because it's basically, you're on this lift going up, you've spent all this time rooting around the mountain in the dark, fighting monsters. And you're in this little lift going up, like, doopy-doo, we've done it, let's get to the top. And I think Atreus is even like, hell yeah, we've done it, Pops, let's get up there. And just as he's saying this gigantic claw pops out, that's an example of it, pops out and starts like harassing the lift, and you're like, oh my god, it's almost like a jump scare of this gigantic monster, and you're like, oh my god, what is this? What now, please? In the land of Norse mythology, what could be after us now? And this horrible little face comes out with its little pointer. I don't know, it's like a beak, but like teeth. A dragon mouth, a snout.
Pointer. It's pointer. We'll go with pointer.
Yeah, its little pointer comes out. And
let's not go with pointer.
No, keep it going. I want to see where this goes.
A snoot.
Yes, its snoot comes out, and and you see its claw and its snoot, and you realise, oh my god, this is a gigantic. Stop laughing! It's serious. You realise this is a gigantic beast. It's a dragon. It's gonna absolutely have you for dinner, because you're two tiny little measly morsel things on top of a lift, and you're in its home in these tunnels. And Razlir retreats into the mountain, and then Atreus again is like, "Whoa, that was rough, wasn't it? Pops, let's carry on," not knowing that you're going to see it again in a few minutes' time. So you come up to the top, and all of this, the world tree, Yggdrasil's crystallized sap is kind of lining the path, and you learn this new ability that you can use crystallized slap. Crystallized slap.
Crystallized slap.
The crystallized slap on the dragon, so you can throw it and it kind of explodes. But you learn this from kind of messing around with roots and kind of exploding things. So you get a new ability, and you're like, oh god, it's about to go down. And you get outside, and Razlir is there messing with Sindri, the poor dwarf. And it's up to you to save him, basically. And it turns into this gigantic, massive boss battle. You jump into his mouth to begin with, and are trying to like cut off his tongue with your little tiny axe. And I just remember playing it going, ah, this is so cool, because it's just so immersive, and so you're like, oh, it's just, you're there with the constant camera angle and the kind of the thumping I can't even put it into words because it's just all of this mad, violent emotion, and it's just exciting. It makes you grin. It makes you just enjoy it so much because the combat's so satisfying and the beast is so big and it's so strange and new and massive. It's one of the biggest fights that you have in the game. That's this like big beast, and it's quite early on. And when you finally end him and the jaw drops down open and Kratos is standing in the middle in like his full testosterone pumped stance, like yes, as the mouth falls around him. It is so good. I cheered, I yelled, my fist was in the air. And the best part about it, apart from it being just a wonderful battle and a great like moment in the game, is kind of this is where you get a real flavour for the interpretation of Norse mythology into how God of War plays out and how it plays with those kind of themes. So there's a dragon in Norse mythology called Nidhogg who gnaws on the roots of the world tree Yggdrasil to kind of like try and get into another world. He's just a real bother basically, and bursts forth at the start of Ragnarok with all of these dead bodies on him that he wields as weapons, and kind of Hraslia as this dragon that you take down with the sap of the world tree that looks like this kind of dead, decaying, wilted kind of monster, kind of ties in all of those themes in such a beautiful, subtle, underrated way. Like he is kind of malformed. I think they kind of talk about it in the art book, I believe, about him being malformed and a little bit raggedy because he's been living in a cave and is adapted to being in the mountains for so long. But that kind of plays into the whole death part of Ragnarok and Nidhogg. It's just really good. It's just really good. It's so fun to read about and to see it and to fight him and to just have an excellent time. I just love him. It's just a great moment. It's just a really great moment. And that would absolutely be one of my favourite standout bits within the game because it's just fantastic. I'm smiling thinking about it because it's just so good. And I'm going to stop saying so good in a second. Any questions?
I actually haven't played any of the previous God of War games, which is, I know, a terrible mark against my character. But I have watched a lot of people play them, and I obviously have like a great impression of them. I have some understanding of God of War, and before playing God of War, one of the big things, lol, I was looking forward to were big things. Like when I think of God of War, I think of scale. I think of, Kratos as being this, shall we say, above average sized man. And then he is often made to look like a tiny, tiny fly on huge, creatures. So I was very much looking forward to experiencing that in God of War 2018, and I was not let down. There were lots and lots of examples of this that I could have chosen. I think the sort of Freya battle comes to mind. There is a whole just giant on the map, like a fallen giant. That is incredibly cool. But the moment I've chosen is the kind of I think it's the first big thing that you see, and it's probably the biggest thing in the game. I don't know, that might be a bit of a push, but it is the World Serpent and Jormungandr, and it's just like, I think the World Serpent is the coolest character in the game, probably. I think it's my favourite character. I think it might be my favourite thing ever, and the reveal of it is so completely incredible for lots of reasons. I think first of all, it's the part of the game where the sort of the way that the game is going to work is kind of opened up to you. You get into this massive lake. You kind of come out of the starting area. You've met the stranger. You're sort of funneled into this lake, which is much more open, obviously being a lake. And it's all very foggy. You're not really sure what's going on, and you come across this island with a message written on it. And this also plays into one of the other things I love about God of War, is the fact that there are lots of things, or there are things that Kratos doesn't know that Atreus does. For example, how to read their language, and also how to speak to Jormungandr as well. But so Atreus reads this message on this rock that basically says they have to cast their weapons into the water. They say the center of the lake, I think, because I don't know. It's a bit of a flex that Kratos, he doesn't just drop his axe over the side. He's like, okay, You know, it just launches it like miles. It's like, it seems unnecessary to me to go quite that far, but you know, whatever. I think Atreus is impressed Kratos. And the whole world basically starts just to vibrate, and I mean, when you're in the middle of a lake, I think that's probably particularly unusual, since you're not on solid ground. And then you just see this giant, like, you know, there are mountains and stuff, and then you're looking through the mountains like, is that a giant snake? Which is never a good sign. And I must admit, like, I didn't really know. Never a good sign. I didn't really know.
A snake that's bigger than the mountains. Not a good sign.
That's not a good sign.
Never a good one.
I didn't really know much about Norse mythology before playing God of War, so, you know, I wasn't aware of the World Serpent. I wasn't expecting to see it, I suppose. You know, it wasn't like, oh, that must be the World Serpent. I was just like, what the hell is that? This is amazing. And I think the other thing I love about Yugmanda is that they're like, as far as I can tell, like a force for good. They're certainly neutral at worst. At worst neutral, but I think actually like a good influence on Kratos and on the world, and sort of helpful. And when you're coming across something that massive, and like I said, you know, you see it slithering through the mountains, and then it sort of comes up out of the lake, and it's so impossibly vast, like completely indescribably vast, and it could like swallow Kratos and Atreus like in a tenth of its nostril. Like it could just, you know, just like a slightly big breath. Like if you scared it a little bit, that would be the end of them. If it was like, and that would be to like the whole boat and the whole world is just, you know, gone in Yugmanda. The fact that it's like, it's not an enemy, you know, it's not something to be fought or feared even, really. I love that about it. I love that so much, and I just think that it's that scene has just filled me with with awe, and I just couldn't believe. Again, this is very early in the game, really. This is like when the world first opens up to you, and you're already seeing this just ridiculously huge, ridiculously exciting character. It just was like, what else am I going to see in this? I mean, what have they got up their sleeve next? We've just seen a snake that's bigger than the mountains. Where can we possibly go next?
Dave, do your best impression
Yes.
of your impression
I was
of
thinking
your
about it.
Amanda's
Go
voice.
Go on.
I don't know. Well,
So,
it can't. We need to up the bass. You know, it's like you
All
gotta
right, tell me
feel
what
it.
to do. I'll do it in the editing.
say, look at my pointer.
Look at my pointer.
Yes, it does have a lovely snoot.
It's a good
It's it's a good snoot. I'm a good snack. Yeah, that's great. It's great.
My God of War moment that I'm going to talk about, yes, it's a moment in the game, but it's more kind of like a personal moment, as in something that I did in the game, and that was when I defeated the Queen of the Valkyries, Sigrun, on a Plat Monday stream. And that's my favourite moment.
It's just
Everyone's
showing
very
off. Is that what
impressed,
this is?
Rosie.
No, it's
Well
Everyone's
done,
very
Rosie.
impressed.
Yes, fantastic.
I could have chosen so many moments, but when I just look back on this game and think
You
of
could have.
what when I just think of what really stuck out, it was the journey of just doing that fight and experiencing it from, like, you know, not encountering it at all. So for a bit of context, this is an optional fight where there's like you're in the Council of the Valkyries. They're all optional bosses, and this is like the last one you need to defeat. And I heard some people say, oh, it's not as hard as everyone says it is. I do it on hard mode. And I also heard other people say, this is the most stressful thing I've done in my life. So I was really conflicted as to what I was going to encounter. So, you know, you put your arm in this like portal thing, and then she just kind of comes bursting out, just this big strong queen of the Valkyries, and she, like, you know, gets Kratos, she whams his head on the floor as it drags along, and then, you know, Mimir's just like, come on now, let's focus, come on. And already you're just like, oh my gosh, you're gonna have one epic fight. And it was I think I held all right at first. I think I got around halfway through her health, and then I was like, right, I was going too aggressively, and I knew this because it really is a boss. At first I thought, right, let's just, Kratos, he's angry. He's the big angry man. Queen of Valkyries, you dare defy me! So, going in there, wailing on her, getting in rage mode, and then you actually do need to take your time because she's got some attacks which, you've really got to start dodging, and you need to, quickly get your shield out, and there are moments where you're doing an attack and she's like, no, I'm going to do this attack instead. And then just that single little snippet just makes your health go like, boom, like all the way down. It was just an incredibly exhilarating and exciting and challenging boss. And when I look back on bosses that left me shaking once I defeated it, that was one of the bosses that did it for me. I think I got her in around 1 hour 45 minutes, I believe it was, looking back on the stream, and I was so excited when I finally did it that I sort of put the controller down, but when I put the controller down I accidentally paused
carefully,
so that when you're just full of emotions, you're just like, ah! And then I just paused it, and then I broke the whole flow of the scene, which was not ideal, but I was just so over the moon that I defeated this boss. And just getting the platinum in general it's such a good platinum to get. There are loads of fun challenges. You've got some when you have to get all the ravens in the world. It was fun to get my axe and just go pew, and then this little raven just like they're like they're like glass spiritual ravens. They're not real ravens, that's mean. And it's just a boss I look at fondly. It was a really challenging boss, really exciting, really fun. And afterwards you feel really rewarded for finally releasing all the Valkyries. And yeah, it's just, what a good fight. What a good blooming fight that was. Well done, God of War. It gave me a very good blooming fight.
It's so
well done,
good.
God of War. Rosie says, well, actually what she means is well done, me.
Well done, Rosie. Yes, another platinum.
It was my first platinum, Rosie. I'm not
It
here
was?
bragging about it. Not bragging about it. It was my first platinum.
Hey, before we recorded,
Not bragging about
you said, I was either going to do Sigrun or this one.
Not
so
bragging about
I
it, Rosie. Just
you
dropping
could
it
have
in the
bragged
video.
about it.
The main thing I remember from playing that first fight was going, "Ooh, who's this?" You talked about him as a scrawny man, but I was like, "Oh, hello, stranger knocking on my door.
This is my house. Here's my son who's hiding at the moment, but it's fine. You'll meet him later."
In comparison to
families.
Kratos, he's scrawny, isn't he? If I stood next to him, I'm sure he'd look like a very tough, imposing man.
He's a good-looking man, is all I'm saying. He's a good-looking man. I opened the door and was like... No, seriously, comment right now if you think the stranger is hot, because I know it is not just me that would invite him into my hut for a cup of tea. Anyway, what are your favourite moments from God of War 2018? Let us know in the comments below. As always, this has been PlayStation Access. Don't forget to subscribe for more PlayStation goodness, and we'll see you again very soon. Thanks for watching.
PlayStation